Joining me now is Year 12 student and founder of Nuclear for Australia, Will Shackel. Now, Will, you got into a bit of a Twitter spat with left-wing climate change activist and son of Australia's first billionaire, Simon Holmes à Court, when you said that Australia is the only G20 country with a nuclear ban. This prompted the Till backer Holmes à Court to write, Will Shackel, why do you keep saying Australia is the only country in the G20 that has banned nuclear? Germany and Italy are in the G20. Both have banned nuclear. The EU is in the G20. Multiple EU members have banned nuclear. Oh dear, he seems a bit upset there. But Will, I wonder whether Simon should have done a bit more Googling before trying to fact check you, because you set him straight about Italy, Germany and the EU. So tell us, do they have nuclear bans?
Well, yes, it is a fact that Australia is the only member of the G20 with a ban on nuclear power. To go into the specifics, Germany currently has just shut down their reactors. They're not allowed to build new reactors, but they could easily switch on the reactors that they currently have. And there's huge efforts in Germany at the moment to do that because they are suffering with high energy bills and, of course, a disastrous record on acting on climate change. And then when you look at Italy, Italy actually has never had a ban on nuclear power. They had two referendums where the people actually voted down nuclear power. So that's not a nuclear power ban. But, you know, if Simon is serious about supporting our efforts to legalise nuclear power, then he should be serious about it and not misrepresent what I say to all of his followers.
Now, which countries are doing the best when it comes to nuclear power? Give us the straight data.
Well, I think probably the best example is in terms of France, where they're powered by 70% nuclear power, and they've been able to, use nuclear power for decades to become one of the lowest, have one of the lowest greenhouse gas emissions footprints of any country in Europe, and at the same time have the lowest power price, some of the lowest power prices in all of Europe. But I think the really important thing is that if Australia was to lift the bans on nuclear power, we could be one of the strongest countries when it comes to nuclear power around the world. We're uniquely positioned to benefit from nuclear power. We have the largest uranium reserves in the world. And already we're a nuclear nation. We have a research reactor 40 kilometres from the Sydney CBD, which is providing medical isotopes for people to help treat cancer. And we export advanced manufactured items around the world using that reactor and using nuclear science. So we are respected around the world for our nuclear science capabilities. And if we were to embrace nuclear power, there is no doubt in my mind that we would be one of the world leaders when it came to nuclear power generation.
And we sit on the world's largest reserves of uranium. So that's just another plus that we're neglecting. The coalition under Peter Dutton is committing to establishing nuclear power. That's what they tell us. Peter Dutton has floated the idea of building nuclear power stations on old coal station sites. How do you think this policy will be received by Australians and particularly by youngsters who are very much concerned about climate change?
Well, I think it will. Obviously, no one knows the details of their specific policy, but I think Australians in general support nuclear power. We were able to see that in the recent news poll, which actually showed that in addition to voters from every single party, whether it's Liberals, Labor or the Greens, supporting a plan for small modular reactors to replace coal-fired power stations, in addition to that, 2/3 of my generation also supported that proposal. So when you look around, even when I was on Q&A last year, a majority of their audience also supported nuclear power. So it's abundantly clear that there is a social licence for nuclear power in Australia. And the first step should be to lift the bans on nuclear power. So at very, very least, we can consider it as an option in our energy mix. And that is certainly something that all Australians inherently support.
Look, if we're going to head to net zero, I don't even see this as a negotiable. We have to have nuclear, otherwise our living standards are going to plummet. How are we going to have reliable baseload power? You can't have that renewables. Does your generation, which is the most environmentally active, if you want to use a nice term, do they still support net zero if it means a dramatic change to the living standards, all the comforts that they're accustomed to, or is it very much dependent on having everything remain as it is, just with lower emissions?
Look, I'll be very frank with you, Rita. I think there's an expectation among young people, and probably a false expectation, that if we were to pursue a 100% renewable plan, something which has never been successfully done around the world, that we would still be able to maintain our living standards and perhaps even, have better living standards. But when you look at the evidence, no nation has been able to decarbonise without using lots of nuclear or lots of hydro. Australia is basically a guinea pig in this 100% renewables plan. I support renewables, but at the same time, like most Australians, say that we should also be able to consider the potential role for nuclear power as part of our mix. And that's not a hard ask. But currently, because of the legal prohibitions at both the federal and also state level, we are not able to even consider it. And like I said earlier, Australia is the only member in the G20 with such a policy, despite Australia being so uniquely positioned to harness the benefits of nuclear power. So, if we want to be able to maintain our living standards, to have an Australia where we're able to have energy security, where we're able to have, the very, very basic certainty that the lights will stay on, that power prices will not continue to go up, and that we'll be able to reach net zero, then we must be considering the role of nuclear power.
Now, the Guardian, in typical fashion, is hysterical with the mere mention of the word nuclear. They've gone with this headline: Peter Dutton wanted a plebiscite on marriage equality. Why not hold another one on his nuclear fantasy? It's a fantasy, Will. Did you know that? I don't remember having a plebiscite about renewables or gas bans or closing down cheap, reliable sources of energy, but here we are. Why is there such hysteria and scaremongering around nuclear, especially when you look at countries like Sweden and France, where they are doing so well with nuclear, and they're actually providing a cheap, reliable, clean form of energy for their citizens?
Look, I think it's really counterproductive that we are entering into this scare campaign, and it's looking like the government is going to launch a scare campaign against nuclear power, which is just, in breach of the basic science. And around the world, people from all political parties, politicians, have been able to support nuclear power, whether you look to the UK, where UK Labor supports it, to the Democrats even in the US, where they support it. Now, actually, Nuclear for Australia tomorrow will be launching a major campaign called Facts, Not Politics, where we want to be able to reset the debate, putting facts first and experts' opinions at the forefront of the debate. Because currently all we're seeing from politicians is really petty political point scoring and misinformation, misinformation fear campaigns. And that is not in the best interests of Australians, and certainly not in the best interests of future generations and younger generations like myself. So we'll be, as part of our team, we've got Dr. Adi Patterson, one of the leading nuclear experts in Australia, as well as Jasmine Diab, who has a background in nuclear science, and she actually studied nuclear engineering as a result of her concerns for climate change. So it's really important that as we see this fear campaign and misinformation campaign ramp up on nuclear power in ignorance of the science, that we are able to reposition the facts to be at the forefront of the debate.
Well done. I don't know where you get the time to do all this, Will, because you're doing year 12. My son's doing year 12, and I don't think you could be running a campaign like this as well. You've also launched a petition calling on decision makers to lift the nuclear ban. And how many signatures have you got at the moment? I'm going to put up the website here, so if people want to support you, they can go to nuclearforaustralia.com/petition. How many signatures are you looking for?
Well, currently it's well over 15,000, so thank you for everyone who's already signed that. We're looking for as many signatures as possible because we need to be able to show as politicians that Australians are actually really serious about getting the bans on nuclear power lifted. So really, it's as many as possible. If people can sign, if they support the bans on nuclear power being lifted in Australia, I'd encourage them to sign at nuclearforaustralia.com/petition.
Well done, Will Shackel. Thank you so much for your time this evening.